All right, let's go ahead and start with a team that I think has the most potential in the ACC because they have the best quarterback in the ACC. It's just a matter of them putting it all together. That remains to be seen. That team I'm talking about is North Carolina, which got a nice end of the, look at the score, 31-13. Look at Drake May's stats. You're thinking, yeah, cool, great performance by the Tar Heels. But that wasn't always the case. There were some dicey moments there. Drake May had some early interceptions back to back, but complimentary football. Everybody take a drink. I said complimentary football, Joe. North Carolina's defense, which has, to me, been one of the brighter spots of the season, did the job. They turned those turnovers into minimal points for the Golden Gophers. I think they came away with a field goal and a punt. And then after those two early interceptions for Drake May, things calmed down. Nate McCollum and Drake May really found that connection. And the rest of the story is how Drake May looked and how good North Carolina can be if they just put it all together consistently, Joe.
It's hard for me to believe that North Carolina hasn't been 4-0, hasn't started the year 4-0 since 1997.
It's wild, right?
It's almost impossible for me to believe.
Well, because they finally got over on South Carolina. That's why.
I look at this. I get it. Some people get confused about our takes on Carolina, but the truth of the matter is, this is one of those 20-year storms. Mm-hmm. And State had one last year, and they couldn't take advantage of it. You look at their schedule, and I want to be clear, there are no layups on Carolina's schedule.
No.
Other than Campbell. Like there's no one on there, and Virginia at home. There's no one on there where you're like, you know what? They're definitely going to win this game. Or there's also games like they could lose. Like they could lose this week at Pitt. Absolutely.
Not with Pitt's offense.
I understand, but Pitt's going to show out in that rivalry game.
Okay, yeah, true.
Miami is the most talented team left on their schedule. Duke is a team that has been motivated and will be emotional for that game, even if they get run out of the gym by either Florida State or Notre Dame. Duke's going to be up for that game, particularly because of the way it went last year. Clemson does not have the skill players that Carolina does, and I know where that game is played. That has a feel of 8-3 Clemson plays their Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. I get that. And then, of course, anytime, State and Carolina get together, you're going to get State's best shot. I say all of this in this 20-year storm, 30-year storm, back to 97, almost 25-year storm. They have every reason to believe that they can go 12-0. Mm-hmm. They certainly have every reason to believe they can go 11-1 against this slate, put themselves in a real position, to play Florida State in the ACC championship game and make the playoff. They have that's every opportunity in front of them. That's all you can really ask for too, right?
I've been accused of nitpicking North Carolina, and that's fine.
Well, no, you know what you're doing?
What am I doing?
You are applying the Carolina basketball standard to Carolina football, which no one ever really does.
I don't know. If you want to put it that way, I see where you're going with it. What I'm doing with them is how we've applied our conversations around. You mentioned NC State. Like, hey, man, this is your opportunity, right. So we're going to nitpick it a little bit more if you fall short or we start seeing some red flags.
Yeah, or Wake in 19. We let Wake off the hook forever.
Oh, yeah, we did. And with North Carolina, I kind of go back to a couple years ago when they came off that Orange Bowl game and everybody was like, oh, they're going to be. I'm like, guys, there's some red flags here. The red flags for North Carolina, for me, are twofold, really. The first one is, and Mac Brown's been saying this out loud, and Mac Brown loves to point out their offensive coordinator doing things a little bit more efficiently, right? So like last week, 2 weeks ago against App State, it was enough with the Wildcat already. What are we doing here, right? And then after the game against Minnesota was like, we just got to let Drake be Drake, which, of course, I will scream to the hilltops, right? Just let Drake be Drake. So with the Chip Lindsey transition and everybody kind of getting an idea of where they want to be, okay, I can see some of the growing pains along the way. But ultimately, it's don't overcomplicate this. You have one of the best QBs, not just in the ACC, but in the country. And it looks like you got some definitive skill position guys like Nate McCullum coming up in this game. You've got Amari and Hampton and British Brooks. Offensive line was a little shaky in this game. But the other red flag that I have is penalties. North Carolina can't seem to play a clean game. They've had 17 penalties so far this season. That's not humongous in the grand scheme of things. It's not like they're Boston College, which is the most penalized team in the country, not just the ACC, but in the country. At 17, they're right there, like in the nice gooey middle of all of college football. It's when those penalties happen. It's these extending series penalties for the opposition, some pass interference, as questionable as they might be, extending drives. And Ryan Nanny, who Celebrity Hot Tub on Twitter, put it perfectly. It's like North Carolina, even though you look at the final score of 31-13, when you watch their games, there's always this, it almost feels like it's about to spiral out of control. And North Carolina football fans know exactly what I'm talking about, because the minute Minnesota's quarterback went out for a series, they brought the backup in, and that dude's scrambling and on design run plays, breaking off yardage and getting first downs. I could see Carolina fans on my timeline going, oh, look at this. Another backup QB is going to light our asses up. Of course, things settled down, and they ended up being fine. But it's there for Carolina. It really is there for Carolina. They just got to clean some stuff up, in my opinion.